Okay, so here we are back in our layout. Now, here comes more of the fun part because I know it's looking kind of boring. And what we're going to do to make this all appear is we're going to dissolve it on, but we want to give it just sort of a little introduction first. And we got two ways we can do that. One of them is with an actual lens flare, which I'm going to call up right here. You can take a light, use a lens flare. That can work okay, but the problem with that is that we really can't streak it very much. Let me just show you how that would look so you know. Take items, add a point light. Okay, we'll call this flare. Gonna move it over and pull it down a little bit. And let's take a look at from the top and hit the center button. And then we'll zoom out a little bit and see where we are. Or perspective often works better. There we go. Put it right in front of these things. Okay, so there's our flare. Press P, get the light properties, lens flare options, just leaving them all on by themselves, and we'll do a quick render. Okay, got a lens flare, and of course we can change that. This is about as far as I ever see anybody really go with these things. And they move it across, and yeah, that's what I say to that. Come on, we can do better than that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to items, and then we're going to go to dynamic objects and add particles. Yes, that's right, particles. Okay, now some of you have my backgrounds in motion tape from a few years ago that I did over with Class on Demand before we had 3D Garage. But this is kind of the same technique. We did all complete backgrounds with this technique, but this is something I was playing around with one day and thought it was actually really cool. And this is a terrific use for it, so I'll show you. So what I'm going to do is take this emitter, and I'm going to move it off to the left. And let's take a look at it from where the camera is. Press 1 to get to your front view, and you can kind of see it's just off to the left of that background. Another good reason we have that background plate there. It just gives us a good reference. Okay, now what I'm going to do is press P for the object properties, and there is my particle emitters right there. Okay, now if you just hit the play button, you'll see that nothing's really happening with the particles. Okay, and if I press 1 to get to just a front view like this, not the camera view, you can see the particles are just kind of floating around in there. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the auto key just for now. And if I come over here to my effects emitter, we're not going to have to worry about too much in here. Except we want to bring the generator size down. So I'm going to go maybe like 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. Okay, and notice that it's now roughly the same size as these fonts right here. Okay, maybe we'll go a little bit larger so it bleeds a little bit. Let's go 0.4. And then I hit the tab key, 0.4, 0.4. Okay, and it defaults to meters, so by hitting 0.4, I get millimeters. Okay, we're not going to worry about the birth rate or the particle limit or anything else right now. Lifetime, we're going to keep this right now at 0. Okay, and what that does is give us infinite particles. The default of 60 means after 60 frames, the particles stop generating. For the motion, I'm just going to push it out on the X like that. Let's turn that off and we can just see here. Okay, so now they're generating down the X-axis, but they kind of slow down, right? Well, that's over here in the Etc. tab. And you can, actually, let's go back here to the Particle tab. And you can change the weight. Okay, so if I increase the weight, which is always a little strange to me, I would think to decrease the weight, but you need to increase it. Just enough so that those are moving straight across the whole scene. And then we get to 300 frames, we still have enough particles. Now, here's one thing that's happening too. They're starting to generate at 0, which is fine. And they come in at 48 frames. So I could do one of two things. I could leave it like this so they build on, which is exactly what I'm going to do. But just in case you're doing an animation that you want those on right when the animation starts, here's what you do. We'll open up the effects emitter. And in the motion, let's see where this is. In the start frame, right in the beginning, you could do, well, let's see. If I move my timeline and at roughly frame 54, the particles have made it all the way across the screen, I would do a negative 54. Of course, you have to type into the right area. Negative 54. And what happens now is at frame 0, the particles have already generated 54 frames, which means at 0, they're already across the screen. So as soon as your animation starts, those particles are already live. Okay. For our particular thing, we don't really need that. We actually do want them to come on because we want to see a little bit of the background. We want the particles to come on, and then we're gonna flare out with some other particles and build on our main logo, which is going to come forward to us, and then we're going to fade right out right around 6 seconds, 7 seconds. So how do we get these particles to look like something? Okay. Well, first let's save the scene. So we save those. We're going to go to Render and open up Viper. Enable Viper and just open it up. Okay. If you click Render, it tells me it needs some data, which is fine. So if you go to Windows and choose Volumetrics, okay, you get the Effects panel. And I'll put it over here so you can kind of see the particles too. From the Add Volumetric dropdown, choose Hypervoxels. Double-click it, and you get the Hypervoxels panel. And in here, you can see all of the objects in my scene. Well, the only object we want to use is the emitter, so I can select it and choose Activate or just double-click it. And as soon as I do, I see the particles. We're also seeing the colored backdrop that I've added. But we don't want a surface-based. And let me increase the size here. I'll show you what that looks like. A surface-based particle, you get kind of this blobby type stuff, which is great for water. We want not a volume, which is good for clouds, but we want a sprite because they're nice and fast and they're kind of wispy looking. Okay, but overall, that's still just kind of, we don't want smoke, right? We want just some cool looking flares, and we want to go beyond a lens flare. So here's how you're going to do it. You're going to increase the size variation, and then I'm going to bring the size back down and just slowly bring it up, kind of like that. Stretch direction, which way did we move them? We moved them on the X, right? And if I stretch it, looks like we're getting some vertical there. And I'm not sure why, so we're going to choose it on the Y. I think what had happened is you know what happened there. I didn't rotate the actual particle emitter. Okay, and particles generate by default going up on the y-axis. So I should have rotated the emitter, but I just chose to animate on the X instead. So we're going to stretch direction on the Y because the initial emitter was on the y-axis. So, okay. And what you can do now with this stretch, if you look, watch. See how they're just blobs like that? And if you increase the stretch, well, it just kind of looks like dust, but this slider stops at 500. If I manually type in something like maybe 2000, now they straighten out even more. And now I can increase the particle size. And if I increase the variation by some crazy amount, I get streaks, just like that. Okay. Now, with so many particles, they tend to start blending together a little bit. So we're going to come back over to our particle emitter. So we'll select the emitter just right down here. Press P to get the object properties and double-click the emitter panel. So instead of a birth rate of 100, let's try 25. And we'll come back to our hypervoxels. And now you see that with less particles, you can also see them right there in the layout. We can see the streaks a little bit more, which is just what we want. Okay, with so many particles coming together and that surface on there as a hypervoxel, it tends to all just kind of bleed together. So less particles, we can see them a little bit more. Okay, now last thing I'm going to do is go to my shading tab, and let's come over here to like a nice kind of a rich yellow. Okay. And if you increase the luminosity, you get this kind of hot looking flare. Play with the density a bit. You can increase it or decrease it, whatever you like. The opacity, I mean. And then you can play with the density. Totally up to you how you want to do it. Okay. I think somewhere in here, because you want to see just a little bit of depth in there. And the number of slices, you can probably keep it at 1. Basically what that's saying is that a volume, which is this, a sprite is a slice of that volume. Okay, and you can choose how many slices. And basically this is just a way for you to render much faster and have a different look. If you come down here to preview within this Viper window, hit make preview, you'll actually see the particles animate on. So I'm going to let that generate, and I will come back and show you how this looks.